Grand Rising family, what's good with it? Give me a moment. Let me post to social media if you would be so kind as to like, share, subscribe. Also, in the description, there are free resources for you to take advantage of if you haven't already. And if you are so inclined to donate, we appreciate you in advance and may the ancestors return the favor to you 10,000 times fold. Ashe. What city are you tuning in from? What have you liked thus far in Blueprint for Black Power? What other books would you like for me to read? What other books have I read would you like for me to come back with so we can review them? Are there any topics? I just recently heard that something happened in Gulfport, Mississippi. Another young man was uh, taken out, by these race soldiers. So if you got any information on that, expound, let me know. It's the community needs to know. I don't want to hear what the media has to say. I want to hear what personal eyewitnesses and members of that community actually have to say. Okay, give me a second. State your name and the city you tuning in from. And oh yeah, we can't do that. You know how that go back and forth. But definitely let me know um, where you tuning in from, what you've learned from Blueprint for Black Power. hmm All right, we halfway done. What's your name? What city you tuning in from? Have you heard anything about what's going on out there in Gulfport, Mississippi? And this is the second. I believe it was two things that happened in Gulfport very similarly. And let's not forget, I forget the young man's name. I think it's D. Monterio, the brother that was driving he was delivering for FedEx and got shot at by the other race soldiers out there. So yeah, I wanna find out more about that information, man, because the community needs to know. You feel me? One second, almost done. So I'm finding out that I just took one day off and I intentionally did it. Not that I had other things to do. That was the main reason that I did it, right? But I'm noticing just with one day off, there were several new changes to the YouTube platform. And one of the things that I'm noticing is that even on my own device, it doesn't show that I just went live. Like I actually got to go to the playlist to find the video. It doesn't show up just like on my channel. Like when I just play my videos, it doesn't show as the last video that I uploaded. And it's been doing that ever since I started reading Blueprint for Black Power. It's cool for now. But that's just interesting, you know. So yeah, let me share this to my news feed real quick. Right? And not just to my news feed. Let me share it to my story. Let me share it to my favorite group, RBG Buffalo. And I don't really post in there a lot or whatever, because I'm not one of those people that's about to go back and forth with you online. That's the reason why I bring the books out. You can't really do the back face. You can't really debate facts. And I mean, unless things change, yeah, I guess you can. But these people spent extensive time and research to do this, and the majority, if not all, of what they're saying is absolutely a fact, right? So I just present you the information. I'll give my little spin on it, you know. But these are behavioral scientists and psychologists and psychiatrists. These people spend their life, you know what I mean, doing work that's necessary, significant, you know what I mean? And actually groundbreaking, because they teach you not just what's going on and the reality of what's going on, how it's been going on, how it started. See, we'll look at something, we'll look at the behaviors of like the youth today, right? And we'll assume that it's the youth that are acting up and not realizing these are years of conditioning being instilled in our people, not just the youth, the masses. We don't control it. We don't control 99% of what we see on TV, what we hear on the radio or TV, nor what we see in these images and ads in the newspapers and the magazines, on social media. We don't control any of that. So it's not playing to our favor. If you've looked at social media, you see how many Black and African people are being censored for saying things that are right. And even when they're found to be right and exact, they don't get compensated for that time or anything, just like we didn't get compensated for being prisoners of war that built this country, right? So I guess I'm just saying all of that to say we must go back and retrieve what is rightfully ours. And that begins with reading. It's one of the major tools you can do, you can use to fight this oppressive society. You know what I mean? And keep your head above water. If they keep telling you how to do, like, think about this, right? If they create and devise ways to separate or alienate the Black man from the Black woman, which kills the Black family, right? If um, they change the definition of the culture that will maintain us and our survival, growth, and autonomy, right? If they educate us only in a fashion to serve them and maintain their power, if they, uh, it's like so many things I can say. I'm almost at a loss for words. But my point is, if we allow them to keep controlling the narrative, and the main way you prevent them from controlling the narrative, you stop giving them that energy. You stop giving them that power, and you take your power back. You stop doing what they recommend that you do. You stop just, okay, there go, bro. What up? What you see? Precise. Allah. Peace, God. You, you must really begin to look in the mirror. Remind yourself that you love yourself. Appreciate who you are, your relativity to the world and the environment and all of the people within your circumference, within your cipher, right? Because these people don't want you to love yourself. They don't want you to love your Black woman. They don't want you to love your Black man. And if we alienate ourselves from one another, right, they can easily conquer because we're divided. We're divided. If you take the Black man out of the home and you incentivize the Black woman to be the breadwinner or the sole earner in her household, but you require her to spend 70 to 90% of her day outside the home, that means that more than likely the television and oppressive media is conditioning the children. If you do that for 400 plus years, now you're starting to see that conditioning reinforces the oppressive behavior that has been conditioned in our mind, right? And in order to eradicate that, right? In order to eradicate that, you have to do something. If you were sick and you may need something to boost your immune system, and we got a sickness, we have a Eurocentric conscious sickness. Think about it. If you strip all people on the planet of their clothing, you're going to start seeing, I can't remember the word, so I'm going to just keep it plain. You're going to start seeing different characteristics that add up. You'll see that Asians look alike. You'll see that Caucasians look similar. You'll see that Africans look alike. And when you look at us, the black man and woman here in the wilderness of North America, and the African throughout the diaspora and on the continent, you'll recognize that we look African. You'll recognize that we are African. But here in the wilderness of North America, we don't speak our dialect, our native tongues, whichever they are, and all of them are our native tongues, because we were extorted and kidnapped from all over the continent, right? It started with the Arab slave trade, then it progressed into the Holocaust that's still ongoing with the transatlantic slave trade, right? Yeah, this is the largest Holocaust in history. Nobody has suffered as long or as much as us. Nobody has endured the casualties. Our history dates back so far that you can't get to the beginning of it. But we populated and civilized the entire planet, not by force, through love and excellent example. All of the sciences, all the philosophies, everything you can name, we created. And anything that veggie backed off of that, again, it had its initiation and its foundation with us. So I'm gonna get back into this. I'm gonna get back into the book because I don't want to get thrown off, right? But again, let me finish posting because yes, I do like to talk when it's worth it. Yes, I do. Yeah, almost done. Almost done. And let me post once more into a group one time. There we go. All right. It could just be my phone. I doubt it. But I do need a new phone. This joint is jacked up. When I say I got cracks all over, ooh, big cracks. Okay. So as I said in chapter 16, we're going to start out talking about other directedness and the reconstruction of the African personality. The other directedness of the modal African political economic personality is incompatible with white American and European domination of Africans because it permits African consciousness and behavior to be manipulated by others than themselves, primarily by white Americans and Europeans. The center of psychological gravity, the source of motivation of the other directed African, lies outside himself and in the hands of others than himself. Who this type of African thinks he is, his self perception, is the product of the history of his interactions with others than himself, i.e., with aliens. I forget what IE is, but I remember it being example or meaning, or in other words, aliens. hmm For he has no knowledge of himself prior to his coming into contact with his exploiters and dominators. For him, prior to his captivity, enslavement, or colonization by aliens, especially Europeans and white Americans, let's not forget the Arabs, he was practically non existent, unconscious, invisible, or at best, possessed of a savage consciousness and existence he would rather not recall. Consequently, his identity was and is one given him by others, one he infers from how others, aliens, interact with him, one he infers and abstracts from accounts and histories of himself written by his alien exploiters and dominators. Remember, I said that the Great Way Nobles always reminds us power is the ability to define reality and have other people adopt your definition of it as if it's their own. This is the trick knowledge that they came with. They have us adopting their definition of our history, of who we are, of what our name should be. Names like John, Paul, Thomas, etc., like all of those supposed guys in the New Testament, those names, um, those names didn't come about, you know what I mean, to like the 16th century. And maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong on that, but I can tell you this: they wasn't around during the time that the said person that they were talking about was around. The letter J didn't even enter the alphabet to the end. It was the last letter added to the alphabet, right? So with that being said, don't believe what these people are telling you who you are. Number one, they don't have a right to define you and they cannot define you. Number two, you define yourself, right? At all times. You define who you are. You define what it is that you want. You define the set trajectory to go and get it. Okay. And not just that, we got our own story to tell. You know what I mean? You just got to go back and do it, and you got to do the work. That's the obligation. That's the way you free your consciousness. Everything starts with a thought. And until you think from the right frame of mind, you're still going to be an African with the mind of a Eurocentric processing, right? If you don't redefine who you are, if you continue to use the names that we were given, a lot of people, they honor their last name and don't even realize that was the last name that they gave your ancestors that were prisoners of war here. Yeah, that's the last name that they gave you, because that's the plantation holder or the owners that had control over the ancestors of yours that were prisoners of war. But you honoring the name like that's who you are. That ain't who you are. We look African, but we using the European language to speak and to define ourselves. We are African, but we speak in English. Ain't nothing greater than the original. Nothing. Moreover, the world he inhabits is constructed by others, his captors, his past and his future, delimited by those who despise him. He is the plaything for the other, bereft of a knowledge of self, of his own history and culture, subjected to a distorted and twisted sense of his origins and reality. All these conditions perpetuated deliberately by his white handlers, he identifies with the alienated images, history and culture fashioned and imposed on him by alien whites who are free to refashion them and do when the occasion calls for it. His consciousness, constructed as it is by the other, essentially the reactionary product of his domination by the other, brought into existence by the other. He cannot conceive of a future existence independent of the other, a future wherein the other is no longer in some way supreme. For him, There's no world for him without white people in it, without white people defining it, a world where he is dominant force and is self-creating and responsible for bringing his consciousness into being and visibility through his interactions with himself and his kind. The other directed African personality is one characterized by subjective feelings of personal and group inadequacy, resentful independency and submissiveness, conservatism and conformity, intolerance and frustration, either low self-esteem or narcissistic high self-esteem, inadequate or inappropriate self-confidence, negative or socially unproductive relations with others, immaturity, limited imagination, and a range of interests. It is a personality designed for powerlessness, gullibility, exploitation, and to futilely seek merger and identification with those who exploit it, fashioned to seek the approval and love of those who spitefully hate it above all else in life. The other directed African personality is a vacuous personality, an empty shell, a bottomless pit, an African container devoid of African content, and therefore suffering a chronic sense of emptiness and insatiable craving for satisfaction. The vacuum created in this personality comes from it being emptied of its African core by its European enslavers. The niggerized version of the original, introjected into its personality by its Eurocentric creators, is designed not to be satisfied, for it is designed to consume things produced by others, consume others like itself, consume itself. The other directed African personality is a wounded personality, one produced by crippling blows to its African originated ego, to its self esteem, self love, and self knowing. Being a wounded personality, it is a vulnerable personality, a personality under severe stress and highly conflicted, but an empty shell subject to insatiable cravings for fulfillment. A wounded personality and suffering from chronic stress and pain. It is a personality vulnerable to addictions to consumption, religion, sex, excitement, the search for ecstasy, painkillers and sedatives, stimulants, analgesics, and hypnotics. The other directed African personality has the feeling of being always under pressure, always under threat, always under attack. It chronically strives to recover its balance, to protect its ego and self-esteem, and self-system from further devaluation and disorganizing assaults from others, from aliens, other alienated Africans, Africans alienated from themselves, just as he is alienated from himself. Thus, the other directed African, intimidated by the other, dependent on the other, is first and foremost a defense-oriented personality. His primary purpose in life is defending himself against further self-devaluation and emotional hurt. His obsessive compulsive concern is with the alleviation or avoidance of anxiety. As a defensive personality, he is prone to deny and or distort reality by a multitude of self-deceptive schemes in order to hold on to what he perceives as a tenuous, sane, and relatively pain-free existence. However, the other directed African personality is so single-mindedly caught up in defending itself against the assault on its persons by others, by aliens, against the disorganization of its ego brought on by its denial of and its attempt to escape from its germinal Africanicity, of its fundamental and uneradicable Africanness. It neglects the discovery and development of means for ridding itself of the true causes of its displeasures and diseases. So caught up in dealing with the emotional effects rather than the realistic causes of its doldrums, it is unable to develop the means of identifying the true sources of its discontent and of developing and executing strategies and tactics for realistically meeting the demands of its problematic situation based on a creatively planned, dynamic, yet objectively appraised, conscious, rational, instructive course of action. I'm going to stop there because I'm going to come back and read it. I'm also going to define this word doldrums because I don't know what it means. But that was one of the most beautiful descriptions of the other African-centered mind, other than oneself. That's the purpose and the reason why one must have knowledge of self. And if you don't know your history and see where you came from, you don't have knowledge of self. I'm sorry to inform you. Knowledge of self. If you listen to that interview One of the things he said that was very impactful and very true is that um, information, factual, historically responsive information is the most valuable resource because it'll teach you how to get the rest of the resources, specifically water, food, shelter, and so on and so forth. I hope your today is great. May your tomorrow be greater. Hotep family, race first at all times, and at all times, race first.